So what can we expect in the Finance Minister's mid-term budget? To help us answer that, economist Owen Nkomo joins us in studio. Thanks very much for coming in, Mr. Nkomo.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, the Finance Minister, as usual, will have his hands quite full. I mean, whenever we preview a budget policy statement, we're always talking about a delicate balancing act. It's no different this time around.
No, it's not, definitely. I mean, it's not been a very easy job being a finance minister in the country in the past 10 years, odd. And I think, obviously, with the absence of, an excess in our funding structures in the government, I think it's always going to be a challenge for the minister to deliver a budget that is satisfactory to everyone.
Yeah. And the issue around SOEs, that just makes his job that much harder, to keep Eskom afloat, to keep SAA afloat, to name just a few. Yes,
Alex Core, you name it, Dinell, it's a difficult exercise. It means that money has to be raised from the taxpayers, excuse me, or alternatively from borrowing money from...
which we don't want to do.
From lenders. We don't want to do that because we've got this indicator that's continuing to flag red lights, in terms of the growth and the debt to GDP of the country. We certainly want to start arresting that. So we need to start finding other ways of financing the deficit. And I believe that there's only one solution to that. Get the economy working, get more people employed, get more companies working, and you start to have a wider tax base. And then potentially you might have a little bit of cash coming in. But that's easier said than done.
I was about to say, so easy, just rolls off the tongue. Get the economy working, get employment numbers up. What's stopping us from doing that?
Well, I think that there's still a lot of different views in terms of what South Africa should be focusing on. We've got, the guiding principles of the National Development Plan, which should be embraced and put into effect by the government and also by the private sector, working together with the unions, say, okay, guys, this is our roadmap, this is our journey, let's all hold hands. And everything we do in our businesses and in government departments, let's make sure that it's striving towards the achievement of the NDP. But unfortunately, that is not happening, and I think it's definitely a big, deterrent to us achieving economic growth in the country.
So our reporter, Rafiwa Madzena from the ENCA Money Desk, telling us that ratings agency will be looking for some direction now. In the past, we were always talking about, there needing to be unity on the part of the governing party, the ANC, unity of purpose, policy direction. Are those also still things that Moody's will be looking to now?
Always. Yeah. They look at the government, they look at the policies, they look at how corporates are performing. Right now you're seeing companies are laying people off like we haven't seen in a long time. Every street you drive, there's stuff being auctioned off. It's a sign that the economy is really under pressure. So therefore we want to see a little bit of policy certainty. We want to see that when the government says they're going to reduce the wage bill, which currently accounts for 35% of the budget, a very big number. We want to see that the government can practically reduce that. Unfortunately, I've been engaging people out there that are employed by the government, and I can tell you the government hasn't started responding to the people who say they want to take this early retirement solution that the government proposed, which would help the government actually reduce its annual expenditure on people employed by the government, and that is a very big problem. So if the economy is not going to be driven in a direction where the government is showing a sense of urgency, the ratings agency have no choice but to be relatively negative when they give us their assessment of our economy.
And it's such a difficult issue because there are so many legs to the story of South Africa's economy. At the beginning of Cyril Ramaphosa's New Dawn, he was on this big investment drive.
Yes.
How do you go to investors, though, international investors, and ask them to invest in our economy in the state it's in now when we can't even guarantee electricity supply?
Yeah, that is a very big problem, and I think that Minister Mboweni will certainly spend quite a bit of time talking about Eskom and potentially, driving his ideas that he put out into the market and the economy a month or ago, which was, rejected by some spaces in the economy and accepted by some. I think he needs to use this medium-term budget statement to drive and convince more people to accept that we need to start accepting that document as something that will lead the country in the right direction in terms of economic recovery. Because if we don't do that and we still continue that there's so much antagonism from different spheres of our economy,
so much politicking,
it's not going to be attractive to foreign investors. So the exercise that the president started when he took over, about a year and a half plus ago, is not going to be helped by continued internal fighting, especially in the leading political party. And I think one thing else that we mustn't ignore is the events happening at the DA. You need an ANC that has a strong opposition party. That will make sure that when the government says we're going to do this, the government does exactly that, and there is no wasted expenditure, which is not budgeted, because we cannot afford to lose any money to unplanned expenditure, as it were. So you therefore need very strong strong opposition in Parliament to make sure that we can call the ANC to order should they be seen to be doing otherwise away from what has been planned and what is expected by the country and foreign investors.
Absolutely. Perhaps just as a parting shot, for ordinary South Africans, for the man and woman on the street, what would they be hoping to hear from the Minister this week?
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think there's much that the Minister can do. He's got no money. He needs to readjust budget allocation from what he did in February. And I think he's going to continue to warn that the economy is in a difficult environment. He's doing everything he can to make sure that the system doesn't crash. And I think he's going to appeal to everyone to continue to support him.
So he's not going to be lightening the load on my pocket or your pocket?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. We have to wait until February next year. And if you think about it, how does he do that when he doesn't have enough money? In fact, I think we need to, as a country, we need to be strong enough to have a very difficult 2 years where fiscal discipline is exercised, austerity measures are felt. We haven't done that, and I think it's been done in other countries, and it's succeeded, in countries like Greece, Italy, and Portugal, and Ireland about 3-4 years ago. It was done in those countries, turned around, but we can't continue as if nothing is wrong if we're looking for hundreds of billions of rands to finance things like NHI. And the timing of NHI as well, when we don't have cash like this, is a big question mark that people will be looking out for to find out if it touches on the funding of the NHI project.
Absolutely. What a loaded interview this is. There are so many issues to discuss, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Owen Nkomo is an economic analyst, just giving us some analysis there ahead of the medium-term budget.